Welcome back, and we're on Fast Track, the roadmap, step 2, and this one is all about position. Here's what we're going to cover in this session. We're going to look at using the qualifying questionnaire, and then from that, making the appointment, and finally, and very quickly, we'll talk about an affirmative confirmation letter. In other words, a letter that just says, look forward to seeing you. Now, before we go any further, again, you're going to need to have in front of you a couple of the items. So can you download? And you can have it on your screen. You don't necessarily have to print it out, but that's better. Have in front of you the telephone qualifier and the confirmation letter. You'll see them both in the resources folder below. So just take a moment now to go do that. Okay. I'm assuming that you've got them in front of you. Now, the telephone qualifier is where we are going to, as the name suggests, qualify our prospects before we go out and see them. And here's why. I don't know about you, but I've been in the situation. Indeed, I know a lot of other people that have, people that are in sales, going out to visit, as representatives or selling a product or service or whatever, but consultants as well. Both of these people will go out, typically sit in front of a prospective client. They've had a bit of a sniff of a bit of business, and there they are pitching across the desk to this person. And about an hour later, when they're closing it all down, that prospect looks at them and says, well, all sounds very well, but we can't afford it. Or, oh, I need to think about it. That's one of the worst ones. Another thing they might say is, no, we don't want it, or come back in 3 months' time. Or another one you might hear is, well, I need to speak to my partner, or I need to put it to the board, or some other such objection that really puts an end to it all. Well, think about it. Doesn't it make sense to know that they're going to say something like that even before you get there? Doesn't it make sense to know whether they're hot or whether they're not? And doesn't it make sense to also have some gauge of their interest? And that's what the telephone qualifier does. It finds out just how interested they are. But furthermore, it gives you a lot of in-depth information about them before you get there too, and establishes you as a professional and as somebody that is credible just by the very questions. So how are we going to perform this miracle so that you're able only to go out and see highly qualified prospects, people that are going to listen to you, rather than spending time and wasting time rather with people that are going to do just that, waste your time? You do it by using the telephone qualifier. So now, if you can, have that before you, and let's just take a look at some of the questions. Here's how it works. You've got somebody that's interested. You've got a whole bunch of people that have perhaps put up their hands to say, yes, I'm interested, through what you've been doing. These might be referrals, or people that you've networked with, or people that have been given to you at network meetings, whatever. The next step is to call them up and go through this telephone qualifier with them. Or, depending on what client generation method you're using, they'll call you. And when they do call, or when you call them, here's what you do. Obviously, they're going to phone up. You're going to phone up and say, hi, it's David Abingdon. Obviously, use your name. And just before we get into this, do you have a few minutes so that we can just, I could just ask you a couple of questions about you and your business? And they're going to say, yes, fine, or call back later, whatever. So, okay, you say, look, what are the biggest problems or challenges that you face in your business today? Now, if you're looking at this telephone qualifier, you'll see that's the first question. They don't know that you've got this questionnaire in front of you. So to them, it's just a question that somebody in your position might ask. So what are the biggest problems or challenges you face in your business today? Very, very rarely you might get somebody that says, well, we don't really have any challenges or problems. And that's when you use the other side to this, where you're going to say, okay, what areas of your business would you like to improve the most? When you think about it, that's the same question, but just coming at it from a different angle. We have found, and I pointed this out in the market in the last section, that around about 92% of businesses, and this was during the good times, answer with one of four responses. And those four responses are these. Number one, can't get enough sales. Two, not enough customers. Three, not making enough profits. Number four, too many competitors. Or words to that effect. But all of these things mean the same. And what they mean is, we're not making enough money. So you can expect to see one of those responses. Another one you might hear is time. Haven't got enough time. Well, again, it's all wrapped up in the same thing. Not having enough time means they haven't got enough money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be working so hard. So let's say they say, yeah, well, biggest problem is sales, not getting enough sales in. And that's probably what you're going to hear. Even in a professional firm like accountants or whatever, they might call it clients or some other such thing, but it means the same. So you write that down. Number two, in general, are you pleased with where your business is today? For instance, number of customers, turnover, profitability, growth, etc. To which, they're gonna say, well, no, if they've answered one of those others. And by the way, just so you know, if you hear anything other than, sales, customer numbers, profit problem, or, words to that effect. If you hear anything other than those, such as, oh, well, we've got problems with our telephones, or the production line has broken down, that's obviously not something that you're there to help with, unless it happens to be your speciality, of course. But so, you need to ask them if there's anything else. And if there isn't, thank them for their time and sorry that I can't help you on this occasion. Move on. And by the way, don't be afraid to move on. There's always, as they say, another bus. You run for that bus, you miss it, and lo and behold, another one comes around the corner and another one just after that. It's a case of saying next, and learn to use that, in your head, next. Because there's loads out there. There are loads of people that have got the problems that we can solve. They just want to know how you can solve it. So, number two, in general, are you pleased with where your business is today? Well, they're not going to be, are they? Not if they've answered affirmatively to number one. Number three, what methods do you use to get new business at the moment? And so you're looking for them and for what they're doing. They're going to say things like telemarketing, advertising, their website. That's normally a red herring because, very few companies get anything out of their website. Emailing, maybe they got some salespeople or reps. You're going to hear things like that. So you then follow it up with, how are they performing? So that you're then looking to get some feedback from them on what's happening there. And you're normally going to get a list of complaints, issues that they've got. Number four, how long have you been in business and how did you get in that business? These are tremendous questions, and I'll tell you why. How long have you been in business? It depends, of course, and you're going to get a quick answer, a short answer to that. How did you get into this business? This is the kind of question where you can literally put your phone on speakerphone, walk into the kitchen, pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, put your feet up, have a sandwich, come back, and they'll still be talking. People love to talk about themselves, and actually that's what it's designed to do. And by you listening to it, shows that you're interested. Strange thing is that people find interesting those people who are interested. Rather strange reversal, but that's the fact. And all about being a good listener is for another time. But that's what you're appearing to be doing. So, how did you get into this business? You're going to get a long response from that. Number five, what's your turnover? What's your annual revenues? How much comes through the business each year? and followed by what's your profit margin or gross profit. Now, there are one or two people that kind of get a bit sort of shaky in asking this question in case they get a fairly terse response. Do not be shy under any circumstances. You're a professional. You're trying to help them and assist them. And anybody that says to you, and you know, I remember it happening to me once or twice, that says, oh, look, I'm not willing to disclose that information. Well, you can't help them. So it's time to say, well, you know, I'm sorry, I can't help you unless you do. If they still insist on doing that, look, best to find out now that they're awkward. Best to find out that it's not going to go anywhere, because if they're like that now, they're going to be difficult later on as well. So time to say bye-bye. Next, usual thing. Okay, number 6, how many new business calls or leads do you generate each month? So we're trying to find out how many inquiries, how many leads, how much interest do they get into their business every month. And I doubt whether they're going to have a precise figure for you, but they'll have, you know, an about. They'll have an average or whatever, and that's what you need. Then part 2 of that is how many of them do you convert into sales? So what's their conversion rate, in other words? And I'm sure you can see from this that we're kind of going down to where those 7 alchemy keys are. We're trying to find out what's going on, what's going wrong. And this all the time is building up a picture for you. Number 7, how many times a year would an average customer buy from you? And what would be the average value of each sale? Again, you've got those 7 alchemy keys there. You've got the questions being asked. This is valuable information, even more so because you can put this into the business growth calculator. And you can do it whilst you're there with them at the meeting that hopefully you're going to make. And in doing that, we're then going to get them to put into it how they feel we could help them and by what percentage. And you get these tremendous numbers coming out. So this is all going to help. But what it also does is that it shows you where you can assist the most. Because you'll see the shortfalls. You'll start to hear about the mistakes. They'll even start to give you excuses about things as you're going through this fact find. Now, just pause for a moment and think how it's going to feel for them being on the other end of this. Imagine what they're thinking. See, people know that they're being qualified. They're going to know this. But that makes it even more of a challenge. And here's the thing, and I said this once before, that when you go through a telephone fact find like this, when you're on the receiving end of it and you feel that you're being tested, well, guess what? You want to pass the test. And that's precisely what they do. So, you know, they're going to want to pass the test as well. They're going to want to be helpful. They're going to want to impress you, which means that your positioning is already starting to go up. And of course, they can't help but notice that these are very potent questions. They're very to the point, no nonsense. And what kind of people do we like to deal with? Well, precisely that kind, because we associate that type of person with being a professional, that they know what they're talking about, that they seem to be experts in their field. That's how you're coming across with asking these questions. Okay, moving on. Number 8, how many customers do you have on your database, both current and past? Now, this question is going to have more impact and is going to be something that you're going to want to consider a little bit later on. But what we're really trying to find out here is how big is their database so that we can market more to them. The current ones so that we can do wallet share, the past ones so that we can do something called a fast cash strategy, which you'll learn about when we get onto Talisman, where we're going to revive some of those past customers. We're going to raise them from the dead, so to speak. So some really good stuff to come. That's why we want to know that. But furthermore, we also want to find out, you know, how close is the relationship? And so therefore we ask, when did you last contact them? It's on there. And what was the occasion? You're going to find a lot of times that they either don't, or it was when they sent them a Christmas card or something. And you know, we want to encourage a lot of customer contacts because that builds a close relationship and that means that there's a high degree of trust and confidence in your client, which means it's easier to sell them more. Pure and simple. Good business. Number 10 over the page. If you could wave a magic wand or sprinkle fairy dust, what would you like to see happen? Now, what we're asking here is, what's your dream? What do you want to achieve? And again, it's one of those things where they're going to, you could almost sit back once they get over the umming and the ahhing bit. But again, they're trusting you with some of their secrets, if you will. This is building the relationship, and that's what it's always about. It's always about relationships between you and them and their customers. Okay, number 10, and this is a very, very important question. It's crucial, in fact. How serious are you about solving your business problems or challenges? Just to clarify this for me on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all and 10 being absolutely right now, do or die, must fix this. Where would you be? Now, we're looking for a 10 or more, yeah? Where we want somebody to say, I'm a 20, I'm 100, 11, 10. Anything less than 10, though, that's troublesome. We're not really interested. And the reason is that what this question is actually doing is it is measuring urgency, their own importance that they put upon their business problem or challenge. Now remember, we're referring here to the question that we asked first. Number 1, what's their biggest problems or challenges that they face in their business? And if they've said sales or profits or one of those other things that we expect them to say, then we want to hear them in this question number 10 to say 10. It's a 10. And what they're really saying is, I want it fixed right now. Then you've got somebody that's really hot. But if they splutter in and in and, and they say, well, it's 7, you need to say something to them like, well, what's more important? Is there something more important than that? And if they say no, then say, well, what would it need to be a 10? And then perhaps they'll say, well, if this and that went wrong. You could then follow it up with, well, okay, how likely is that to happen? And generally their response is a kind of an agreement that it's very likely, and therefore it becomes a 10. Do you see? But if they're adamant that it's only a 7 or an 8 or even a 9, I'm afraid to tell you, then you've really got an issue, because, they're not going to be as receptive as you want when you get there. You want this to be on their minds all the time. They've got to fix this, or, it's real big issues, big problems for them. So you're looking for a 10. Don't go in if it's not. Okay, there's lots more fish in the sea. There's millions of businesses out there. You only need a couple of them. So getting 10s isn't that difficult. And the 10s, these are the good clients. These are the ones that really will want to make things happen. The other ones, you're pulling them along, and they are, high management for you. You don't want to be there. High maintenance, all of that. You don't want to be there. Okay, number 11. Now this is the close. This is where you're going to make the appointment. Good, you say. I think we should meet. Do you have a room where we'll be undisturbed for approximately 1.5 hours without interruption or telephone calls? And they've been through this with you this far now. It's unlikely, highly unlikely, unless you've said or done something that, is regrettable. It's highly unlikely they're going to say no. So you set the time and the date. Just a little tip. Always make sure you set that time or date, for at least 5 days ahead or more. You don't want to appear too anxious, too desperate, because that's how it'll come across. So, yes, I can fit you in next week at such and such. That's how you want it to be. Again, it's all about positioning, which is a bigger subject that we're going to talk about later. However, we're doing it here right now. Number 12. Again, important question. I've fallen into this trap. Those holes in the road. I've fallen into just about every one of them. And this is the tarmac. That you're, on the yellow brick road. Number 12, by the way, is there anyone else in the decision-making process that you feel should be invited? And by that, I mean, does anyone else need to okay this should you wish to go ahead? Now, it's kind of a mini close in many ways, because you're kind of saying to them if they want to go ahead, and whether they say yes or no, they're indicating to you that it's, providing all their questions are answered and you appear to have the solutions for them, there's no reason why they wouldn't. But what the question is really aiming at is there anyone else in the equation? Because you don't want to go in there, be there for an hour and a half, and at the end of it, as has happened to me, for them to turn around and say to you, oh, I need to go and talk to my partner. Well, where did that come from? And now you've just wasted all that time. And you don't want them talking to their partner. You want to do the talking. So the easiest way of doing that is doing it while they're both there. So don't fall into that mistake, and do not go seeing them if they say yes, there is somebody, but they can't be there, so you can just come see me. You don't want to do that unless you go do it just for the practice of it, because that's all it'll be. Because they will defer to someone else. You want the decision makers there. Top tip. Moving on, number 3, the confirmation letter. Now, you need to email this out to them, or you can send it as a letter by post if you want. The heading on the letter is our forthcoming meeting. By the way, you should have downloaded this and have it either on your screen or right in front of you right now, whichever. 11th of April 2013. Dear John, I hope you'll find our meeting at 2 p.m. in your office on Tuesday, 16th of April, to be one of the most enlightening and potentially one of the most profitable times you'll ever spend. In this meeting, you're going to learn things about your business that could literally make you thousands in profit over the next few months. In order to gain the maximum value from our time together, would you please allow an hour and a half of uninterrupted time? If you need to change the time or date, please let me know immediately by calling me on and your phone number, and we'll reschedule for another time. I look forward to a mutually profitable time ahead. Warmest regards, your name. That's it. That's all that needs to go out. And then, of course, you're going to go along to the meeting, which is what we're going to discuss next. We've looked in number 2 here at using the qualifying questionnaire, and we explored it in detail. I hope I've impressed upon you just how powerful this device is. And indeed, when we go into Talisman, we're going to show you how to make these for your clients. And so, that's going to be a tremendous service that you can provide to your clients, and they can then filter their own customers. It's also going to build and develop their business, and I will tell you when we get onto that just how powerful that can be and how it can multiply their profits. We went through that qualifying questionnaire, and you've seen how you can close as a result of it and make the appointment. And then finally, we've just looked at the confirmation letter, which you're going to be sending out to them to tell them when the appointment is, and most importantly, if there's any changes, to give you a call. So there we go, and we will wrap that one up and move on to number 3, coming up next.